Hey, Joe, was your original location in Santa Cruz or for your
Yes,
shop?
I will tell you the story there, Frankie. I was living in San Jose, and I loved comics. And I went to college. One of my roommates was a writer of comics, Mike Friedrich, and he got me interested again. I stopped reading in high school, but so then I started reading comics again, and that piqued my interest. And my first wife was from Santa Cruz. I lived, born and raised in San Jose, so I was when I moved to Santa Cruz, I was driving to San Jose twice a week to buy my comics. And I thought, well, that's kind of silly. Somebody else is probably doing it too. And I moved here on August 15th of 1976. I met a gentleman who became my partner in early September. We basically opened the store the day after Thanksgiving in
Ah,
November of 76. I had no plan to open a business when I first moved here, but it was just kind of something that happened. It's kind of weird. It just
oh,
kind of
wow.
happened. And
Nice.
so we opened the store the day after Thanksgiving in 1976. And our original location was on Lower Pacific Avenue in Santa Cruz. It had been in its heyday an old family grocery store, like a corner market. And it was a market for a number of years. And then in the somewhere after the 50s, the flood, the owner, elderly lady, she ran it as an antique shop. And when she passed away, the son and daughter-in-law inherited um, the place, and they're the ones who eventually sold it to us because it was not being used at all. So we started in that location in 1976, and we were there from 76 until the 89 earthquake, which damaged the building. So what happened was we were lucky. We were able to stay in the building because it was wood. It was not a brick and mortar or lath and plaster like a lot of the buildings in Santa Cruz were. So because we were able to stay in the building, we didn't lose any business until Thanksgiving. We stayed in business through November while the city came together and built these big tent-like structures, pavilions. And the city built 8 of these big pavilions, and there were 45 businesses that were able to stay in business. And we opened in those pavilions the day after Thanksgiving in 1989. So 13 years in the original building. Then we opened in the tent. We were told that we would be in the tent 6 months, and it was actually 3 years to the day that we were in the tent. 3 years. And then the building we're in now was being constructed, the parking structure. It was being constructed with partially with relief money from the earthquake that was raised. And we moved in here, believe it or not, in 1989. We were the last of the 45 businesses to come out of those tents. And we moved in here the day after Thanksgiving. So we've had 3 locations, the original, the tent, and our current one. And we've been open in all 3 on the day after Thanksgiving. And so 13 years in the original, 3 years in the pavilion, and 27 years next month in the current store. So 44 years in town altogether.
Wow. So you said you were driving over to San Jose to get your comics. Which shop was that? Like, what was the name of that shop? Do you remember?
Well, old timers from my generation will know the name uh, Bob Sidebottom, his comic collector shop. Bob was one of the original comic stores in the country. Um, and he had a little shop on San Fernando Street near San Jose State.
Wow.
He would play jazz records. He had old Fillmore posters, and he had stacks and stacks and stacks of comics. And he was one of the original guys that really helped get comic book stores started. Many, many, many guys of my generation who eventually opened their own stores built their collection buying comics from Bob Sidebottom. It was kind of nuts. And
Wow.
right now, if you go down to San Fernando Street in San Jose, the Gordon Biersch restaurant is right there where his shop used to be, between second and third. Bob passed a number of years ago, unfortunately. He actually opened a second store in Monterey,
Oh.
and he was hoping that he would be able to move there.
Oh.
He didn't generate enough business to do it, so he had to close the Monterey store. And then he had some heart problems, and he passed away. His wife took the store and basically sold it down, cleared out the inventory of what was there. So And interestingly enough, a number of years ago, Neil Gaiman gave a presentation at San Jose State, and they had a party for him afterwards in the restaurant that before Gordon Biersch took it over. It was a small restaurant where Bob used to have his shop. And I walked in, I couldn't believe it. This is the place I spent hours and hours and hours and hours in college going through for my comics. Wow. And I turned to the guy from San Jose State and I said, "You have no idea what this building is, do you?" So I explained to him that he was having Neil's party in the original comic store in San Jose. It's crazy.
Wow, that is pretty crazy. That's
Yeah.
a great story, Joe. Hey, your shop was featured in that movie Lost Boys. Is that correct?
Bingo.
That classic movie.
The classic cult movie that. Okay, quick story about
vampires, that. Yeah. What's the story behind that?
The story behind that is they were going to make this movie. We had no idea. They came to Santa Cruz and they were looking for locations because they could not find a comic store. They were going to build their own, make one out of an empty building or something. My partner at the time, Jim Ushbacher, his wife, Lisa Jensen, was writing and still to this day writes the movie reviews for the Good Times here in town. In fact, that's how they met. When she came into our store looking for material because she had to write a review for Star Wars. And that's how they met, and they were married and spent every night together from that time until he passed a couple of years ago. So Lisa knew people in the movie business, and of course, in town, the people in Santa Cruz who are the liaisons to the movie business. So when a movie studio comes to town and they need a location for a movie or a TV series, they go to the Visitors Bureau and they deal with a particular individual. And that person knew Lisa. And when they told her they needed a comic store, she said, "I know where we can go." She brought them down to see us, and they liked the building because it was big and they could dolly their cameras and it was funky looking. It looked like something that could be on the boardwalk. We were a quarter mile away from the boardwalk, but the magic of the movies made it look like we were on the boardwalk, and people still come to town and go to the boardwalk looking for our store, and it was never there.
That's funny.
What they did was they built a wall in the gutter outside. We were on the street, quarter mile away. You build a wall, you throw some graffiti on it, and then you put Laughing Sal in front of that. And from inside, when they shot the camera, it looked like people walking by were on the boardwalk. So they fooled people into thinking we were never on the boardwalk. So they shot 3 different Saturdays in our store. They shot the beach scenes with the bonfire and the band and all that, Monday through Friday after closing, late at night when it was dark. And they couldn't shoot on Saturday. They didn't have enough darkness. So they built the fake set on Friday, the wall and everything, and they redid our store. They opened the doors that we had nailed shut. They opened all those doors. In fact, there's one scene where Corey Feldman is opening the store as he's pushing the door, and Sam's talking to him as he's opening the store for the morning. That was a door that never was supposed to be open. They pulled all the nails out and opened the doors. So they set up everything on Friday, they shot on Saturday, and then they put everything back on Sunday the way it was. You would think that they would do their shooting in 3 days and then be gone, but they couldn't do it that way because they had to shoot on the boardwalk from Monday through Friday. So they did 3 consecutive Saturdays in our store of shooting, and one of those days didn't even make it into the movie. But we were watching them shoot this movie, and there's young teenage kids going, "Hey, truth, justice, and the American way." And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to suck. This movie is going to be so bad. We didn't know anything about the movie. They don't show us the script. All we know is these young kids that are standing around, and then they say the same lines over. They shoot the same scene, I don't know how many times. They shot from 9 a.m. till midnight. Every Saturday they were there. Wow. And it was embarrassing. We thought, oh boy, this is going to suck. Little did we know when we finally saw the movie how great the movie was, that it would have legs. And every day, still 44 years later, Frankie, we have somebody come in and talk Lost Boys, and it's just been amazing. I got something to show you. One sec. I should have been prepared. I apologize. So what do I have here? This is Vampires Everywhere. What this is, the original movie prop, it was never a comic. The comic that Corey Haim holds in his hands is called Vampires Everywhere. They made 2 props, Destroy All Vampires and Vampires Everywhere.
Wow.
This is the one he had in his hand when he was told by the Frog Brothers you're going to need to call us. Our number is in here. He goes, I don't like horror comics. So
Wow, that is actually from the movie.
Yeah, so the original movie prop, they left with us. And a lot of the guys signed the interior.
Nice.
What this is there's a company in Southern Cal that is licensed to make replicas of movie props. This has our store logo down here in the corner. It's our unique store variant cover for this. And what they did was they took a lot of the interior. There's me the way I used to look in 76 when we made the movie. Yeah, I looked like Frank Zappa, for crying out loud. Of course, in the 70s, dude, we all looked like Frank Zappa. What can I tell you? And what also is in here is down at the bottom, you can see this. Let me hold it better. This says Vanity, if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
Let me get this. Can you see what that is there?
Oh, yeah, I see it.
Okay. Vanity is the actual comic. See, she's kind of a cross between a female detective and Red Sonja there or something, with the skimpy bikini and all that.
Wow.
Vanity was just a female detective. They took a Vanity comic and they put this fake cover on it. And then they put inside two pages of vampire artwork. So they just created something they needed to fool the camera. And they actually put additional pages in black and white from the Destroy All Vampires comics. So both of the artwork for both of those props is in this replica. And they actually gave us the opportunity to do our own store variant, which I showed you. So we now have the original in the store that's on the wall. And now for visitors who come to the store, we have this replica that we can sell them for $10. And they're all very, very happy to get that book when they come in and we talk to them about Lost Boys.
Oh, interesting. You have some replicas for sale on that one?
Yeah, we have copies of that for sale. We also have, 4 years ago, DC did a sequel to the movie, a 6-issue series written by Tim Seeley. And for our 40th anniversary, we flew Tim and his wife out from Chicago, where they live. And he came out and signed the first 2 issues of the 6-issue series were available at the time. And he signed those. We have a few of the number 2s left that we still have that he signed. So we have this prop. We have the number 2 comic that he signed in the store. We have a few magnets, things of that sort. There's not a lot of merchandise on Lost Boys that we can get, but right now that at least we have something. And people come, I have to tell you, Frank, from all over, not just all over the country, all over the world, Italy, Germany, Australia, all the states, Brazil, and it's amazing. They go on the tour to see all of the locations, but then when they come here, they actually meet somebody who was in the movie who they can talk to. I was in it for 3 seconds playing the pinball machine in the background when Grandpa really says, let's go to town. And then when he gets out of the car and says, that's as close to town as I want to get. The very next scene, Corey Haim is walking into the comic store and he walks past me looking like Frank Zappa playing the pinball machine. And I snuck in a line. I'm not supposed to talk in a movie if I don't have a SAG card, And I pretended the machine screwed me. And I said, oh, did you see that? And if you crank the volume to 8, you can hear Joe say a line he wasn't supposed to say.
That's awesome. All right. I want to see that movie now. It's been a long time. I'm about to.
One more quick story about the movie. Quick story.
Yeah.
There's a line where Corey Haim impresses the Frog Brothers with his comic book knowledge. He says, I'm looking for Batman number 14. And they go, heavy duty book. Well, the original way that they shot that scene, he actually says, I'm looking for Batman volume 2, number 7. And at the time, that did not exist. There was only one volume of Batman. Oh. So when they shot the scene, I walked over to the director, Joel Schumacher. I said, Joel, if you're going for a laugh, you're going to get it. But if you're trying to establish that Sam's a serious collector, you blew it because he just asked for a comic that doesn't exist. Wow. Schumacher's eyes just rolled, man. And they stopped everything. And in those days, no computers or cell phones. They had to get on the phone. It took an hour to get in touch with the writer in L.A. and okay a line change. And I can still see Schumacher with the phone in his hand, turn to me and go, Joe, how about Batman 14? And I said, fine. And that's why Sam says it in the movie. Did I get a credit? No. Did I get a nickel? No.
That's a great fun fact.
Happens all the time in movies, right? What are you going to do?
Hey, thanks for sharing that. That's
absolutely.
Pretty classic. Joe, just quickly moving on. Let's see. I was going to ask you about your anniversary coming up. It's been, what was it, 44 years?
44 years.
Been opening for business.
Yes.
Wow. Any plans for that at all?
Well, we always have a holiday sale, not on that weekend because Thanksgiving, a lot of people are out of town. We don't know what's going to happen this year with the COVID. So we usually plan our big celebration on the first weekend in December. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to have a big sale. We usually have it on that weekend because that's the day the downtown has their holiday parade, which I assume this year will not be a physical parade. I have no knowledge yet, but I cannot see them having a parade that's going to bring people downtown in growth. They want people to socially distance, etc. They may do a virtual one. I don't know. But at the same time, we're going to celebrate. By next year, for our 45th, we're going to have big to-dos and guests and stuff. We used to bring in guests for our anniversary, but with COVID, it doesn't make sense to bring in people. It's just like my other life is as a musician, Frankie, and I've played in clubs. I've played at the Shadowbrook for the last 14 years. But right now, even though they're open for 25% indoor dining, they have not brought me back because they're using the bar as another dining room. So the idea of me singing is to bring in people for a casual drink, listen to some music, and maybe increase their bar tab. Well, there is no bar tab. There's only dining. So once they get past that and they can reopen more, I'll go back to singing again. But in the meantime, here we all are. We don't know what COVID's going to bring. I'll sing an occasional gig. I did one last Saturday night. I sang at the Pono Grill in Capitola. I was inside and people were outside, and it was like I was in an aquarium singing through there. You know, it was kind of fun with the speaker outside and everything. So we make lemonade out of lemons. But our anniversary coming up, we're going to be doing some special quick sales and stuff. Our big sale will be that first weekend in December.
Oh, I see. And where can people find your music? You play guitar, Joe?
I play guitar and sing. I have a number of things that if you look up my name, Joe Ferrara, on YouTube, there are a number of Joe Ferraras, but you look for this face, you'll find me. I had the good fortune to sing the national anthem for the San Francisco Giants once a year for 30 years.
Oh, yeah, I read that on your website, yeah.
And there's a link to a YouTube on there. And then my wife, Dottie, we've been married 33 years now. It's my second wife. She has a YouTube channel, and I recorded a lot of songs in my living room, like a lot of guys are doing during COVID, and they're all posted there. So you can find me under my name or under my wife's there. And in my store, Atlantis, I have my 2 CDs available for purchase as well.
Nice, Joe. Right on. Hey, real quickly, what was your involvement with Comixology? And is that Amazon's distribution?
Well, Comixology existed before Amazon bought them, right?
Oh, okay.
And when they first started, I was contacted by Dave, one of the owners, and he knew that I had a lot of contacts because of being in this business and going to San Diego all these years. I met a lot of wonderful creators. So I had the privilege of being the first interviewer of the very first podcast of Comixology. And I believe I interviewed, it was either Scott Shaw or Bill Morrison. I did both of them. And then at one point, Comixology actually interviewed me. So I was the first interviewer on the first podcast from Comixology when they started out. Yeah. Years ago.
Nice.
Years ago. Comic book stores. When I started, most comic book stores were basically indoor flea market guys. And Will Eisner knew that comic book store owners had a passion. We loved our comics and we could sell. We fall in love with a comic. You walk into a comic store and the guy behind the counter says, "Man, I've got something that's perfect for you. It's awesome. And try it. If you don't like it, I'll take it back, whatever." You know, how do you say no to that person? So Will Eisner knew how important that was, but he also knew that comic store owners needed to become more professional. So the annual awards, the equivalent of the Oscars for our industry, are named after Will Eisner, the Eisner Awards. They are presented every year at the banquet on Friday evening at the San Diego Comic-Con. Did not happen this year. They were virtual. But every year they give out the Eisner Awards, and Will created a category In addition to best writer, best artist, best humor publication, etc., he created a category for retail stores. And it's kind of a Hall of Fame thing. Once you win it, you're in. You don't win it again. The idea was, if we can give comic store owners something to aspire to, maybe they'll become more professional, they'll clean up their act, and they'll make it more presentable for the non-comic book person, the civilian, we call them, who wants to walk into the store and enjoy it. Now, you have to remember, this was back before the movies were big, okay? And Star Wars is what changed everything. When I opened my store in 76, it was just a little funky comic store in November of 76. Well, boom, 6 months later, we got Star Wars in May of 77. That changed everything. So same thing happened. Will created this category for comic retail stores. We were fortunate enough to receive that award in 1996. Then I was a judge in 1998, and I was appalled at the lack of process. And I made suggestions. They said, well, write them up. I said, okay. I wrote up some suggestions, and they called me and said, okay, you do it. So I've had the privilege since 1998 of being in the room with 6 judges. I'm not a judge, but I facilitate. I'm the facilitator of the award for comics, the Will Eisner Spirit of Comics Retailer Award. And every year we get submissions from about 40 comic stores from literally all over the world. And a panel of judges comes together, and I spend the day with them. And at the end of the process, on Friday night at that award ceremony, I have the privilege of presenting that award to the receiving store. So I have made friends. And then the next year, that store becomes a judge. So stores that have won in Tel Aviv, in Brazil, in South America, in Spain, in Madrid, all these places, New Zealand, I've made friends with all these people, because then they come and their owners become judges. And I have to say, Will would be so tickled to see the level of professionalism. The Big Bang Theory does us a disservice, because Stewart is not your typical comic store owner. He's funny, and they propagate the stereotype for the sake of the joke. But you're not going to walk into a comic store and find a Stewart anymore. Those days are gone. You're going to find articulate, passionate people, both men and women. A lot of women own comic stores. A lot of women work in comic stores, and they love comics. So a plug out there for all the professional comic stores that are carrying a wide variety of product that anybody could walk into a comic store and really enjoy.
That is awesome. Will Eisner, huh? And
Will Eisner. Look him up.
That's an annual.
It's the big banquet every Friday night. The Eisner Awards are presented every Friday at Comic-Con. If you ever get to go to Comic-Con, don't miss that banquet. It's got all the stars there, and they bring in presenters that you wouldn't believe. From Hollywood. Samuel Jackson was a presenter one year. Edward James Olmos was a presenter. A couple of years ago, Michelle Nichols was a presenter. It's pretty exciting to meet all these people.
And you're well deserving of that. You said 1996 you had that?
We received it in 96, yes.
Nice. Hey.
Pretty special, yeah.
Joe Ferrara, once again, man, I have to thank you again for your time.
Joe tea. I drink Joe tea.
Oh.